Welcome to Tech with Kaushik. This is part 12 of our complete practice question series for the AZ-104 Microsoft Azure Administrator exam. Test your knowledge with exam-focused questions covering key Azure administration concepts. Choose your answer before the timer ends, then review the correct answer, clear explanation, and practical exam tip. Let us begin part 12. Question number 477. This one tests your understanding of self-service password reset. Review the situation. An organization has a Microsoft Entra ID tenant named Fabricam.com synchronized with on-premises Active Directory. The tenant contains 3 users: admin SEC, assigned the security administrator role admin bill, assigned the billing administrator role user ops, assigned the reports reader role self-service password reset, SSPR, is enabled for all users with the following configuration. Number of methods required to reset, 2 available methods, mobile phone, security questions required to register, 3 questions required to reset, 3 The configured security questions are: what was your first childhood pet? In what city was your first job? What is your favorite book? For each statement, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. Review Statement 1. Admin SEC must answer the question in what city was your first job, during a self-service password reset. Review Statement 2. Admin bill must answer the question what was your first childhood pet, during a self-service password reset. Review Statement 3. User ops must answer the question what is your favorite book, during a self-service password reset. The answer to Statement 1 is no. Admin roles are restricted from using security questions in SSPR. The answer to Statement 2 is no. Admin roles cannot use security questions for SSPR. The answer to Statement 3 is yes. Non-administrator roles use configured SSP or security questions. Remember this distinction for the exam. Entra ID administrator roles automatically override default SSPR policies and cannot use security questions for password reset. Now consider question number 478. Consider this scenario. An administrator has an Azure storage account named StimageSprod that stores blob images. You need to create a destination storage account and configure object replication from StimageSprod to the new account. Select the appropriate configuration options for the destination storage account and target resource type. Select the value that correctly completes each statement. The first statement reads, destination storage account kind, the blank. The available choices are storage v2 or blob storage only, storage v2 only, storage v2 or file storage only, or storage v2, blob storage, or file storage. The second statement reads, object type to create in destination storage account, the blank. The available choices are container, file share, table, or queue. For Statement 1, select storage v2 or blob storage only. The destination must be a general-purpose v2 or premium blob account. For Statement 2, select container. Object replication is configured between blob container pairs. Exam tip. Object replication works between blob containers and storage v2 or premium blob storage accounts. Review question number 479. Carefully. We are moving to Azure RBAC. Begin by examining the scenario. An Azure subscription contains a virtual network named VNet Core inside a resource group named RG Networking. A user named user admin 1 currently holds the following roles: reader, security admin, security reader. You need to ensure user admin 1 can delegate the reader role on VNet Core to other team members. What should you do? Review each available choice. Option A is assign user admin 1 the owner role for VNet Core. Option B is assign user admin 1 the contributor role for VNet Core. Option C is assign user admin 1 the network contributor role for VNet Core. Option D is assign user admin 1 the contributor role for RG Networking. In this case, select Option A assign user admin 1 the owner role for VNet Core. This is correct because to manage and assign Azure RBAC roles, such as delegating the reader role, a user requires Microsoft authorization/role assignment/write permissions. Among built-in roles, Owner and User Access Administrator possess role assignment permissions. Now consider why the remaining options are unsuitable. B. The contributor role allows managing resource configurations but cannot grant or assign RBAC roles to other users. C. Network contributor can manage network resources but lacks role assignment permissions. D. Assigning contributor at the resource group level does not grant role assignment permissions. Keep this examination point in mind. Only Owner and User Access Administrator built-in roles grant permissions to manage Azure RBAC role assignments. Question number 480. Now, an administrator manages two Azure App Service web apps named App Alpha and App Beta. Each web app contains a production slot and a staging slot. No custom or on-demand backups are configured for either staging slot. Custom backup schedules configured on the production slots are detailed below. App Alpha, backup frequency equals every 1 day, start date equals January 6, 2026, retention equals 7 days, keep at least one backup equals yes. App Beta, backup frequency equals every 1 day, start date equals January 6, 2026, retention equals 30 days, keep at least one backup equals yes. For each statement, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. Statement 1. On January 15, 2026, the App Alpha production backup taken on January 6, 2026 is no longer available for restore. Statement 2. On February 6, 2026, you can retrieve a backup taken from the App Beta staging slot on January 15, 2026. Statement 3. On January 15, 2026, you can restore the App Beta production backup from January 6, 2026 to the App Beta staging slot. Statement 1 should be marked yes. It is outside the configured 7-day retention period. Statement 2 should be marked no. No custom or on-demand backup was configured for that staging slot. Statement 3 should be marked yes. The backup is within retention and App Service supports restoring to a deployment slot. The key takeaway is App Service custom backups are app/slot specific, and a retained backup can be restored to a new or existing deployment slot. The next item is question number 481. This question moves us into resource tags. An Azure subscription contains a resource group named RG Resources in West US with tag env, prod. An Azure policy assignment named policy append tags is applied at the subscription level with policy definition append a tag and its value to resources specifying parameter tag name cost center and tag value CC100. After policy assignment, an administrator provisions a storage account named Data 2026 in RG Resources, West US, with tag app, billing. Identify the tags assigned to each resource. Choose the correct entry for every drop-down field. For the first statement, tags assigned to RG Resources, the blank. The options for this statement are env, prod only, cost center, CC100 only, or env, prod and cost center, CC100. For the second statement, tags assigned to Data 2026, the blank. The options for this statement are cost center, CC100 and app, billing only, env, prod, cost center, CC100, and app, billing, or env, prod and app, billing only. The correct value for statement 1 is env, prod only. Policy append rules target child resources, not resource groups. The correct value for statement 2 is cost center, CC100 and app, billing only. Resources get explicit and appended policy tags, parent RG tags are not inherited. Azure Resources do not inherit tags from parent resource groups unless an explicit inherit tag policy is assigned. Proceed to question number 482. Scenario. An Azure subscription contains virtual network vNet Hub with 3 subnets, subnet 1, 10.10.1.0/24, connected to VM1, 10.10.1.4, subnet 2, 10.10.2.0/24, connected to VM2, 10.10.2.4, subnet 3, 10.10.3.0/24, connected to VM3, 10.10.3.4, functioning as an NVA with IP forwarding enabled. Route table RTNVA contains user-defined routes. 10.10.1.0/24 leads to virtual appliance 10.10.3.4, 10.10.2.0/24 leads to virtual appliance 10.10.3.4. Route table RTNVA is associated with subnet 1 and subnet 2. For each statement, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. The first statement is, VM3 can successfully initiate a network connection to VM1. The second statement is, if VM3 is shut down, VM2 can successfully establish a network connection to VM1. The third statement is, VM1 can successfully establish a network connection to VM2. For the first statement, choose yes. Subnet 3 system routes permit direct traffic to subnet 1. For the second statement, choose no. Traffic routes through the offline NVA and drops. For the third statement, choose yes. VM3 forwards routed traffic symmetrically between subnet 1 and subnet 2. A useful examination rule is this. User-defined routes override system default routes. Traffic directed to a powered-off virtual appliance next hop will fail. Proceed to question number 483. Scenario. An enterprise network has virtual networks VNet A and VNet B configured with VNet peering. VNet A hosts a VPN gateway with static routing and maintains a site-to-site VPN connection to an on-premises site. A Windows 10 workstation connects to VNet A via point-to-site (P2S) VPN. After establishing VNet peering between VNet A and VNet B, on-premises clients can reach VNet B, but the point-to-site Windows 10 client cannot reach resources in VNet B solution. Re-download and reinstall the VPN client configuration package on the Windows 10 workstation. Does this solution meet the goal? The options are: Option A, yes. Option B, no. The required response is Option A. Yes. When virtual network peering is created or updated after point-to-site (P2S), VPN clients have downloaded their connection profile. The P2S client route table does not automatically include routes to the newly peered VNet. Re-downloading and installing the updated VPN client package updates the client routing table to include routes to VNet B. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. B. The solution is correct because P2S VPN clients require updated configuration packages containing new routes to newly peered networks. Remember this distinction for the exam. Always re-download and reinstall point-to-site VPN client packages after adding or updating VNet peering configurations. The next key item is question number 484. The central scenario is as follows. A user named user-admin1 holds the global administrator role in tenant contoso.onmicrosoft.com. User-admin1 creates a new Microsoft Entra ID tenant named partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. You need to populate user accounts in partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. Solution: instruct user-admin1 to log into the new tenant and create the user accounts. Does this solution meet the goal? Focus on the distinction between these options. Option A, yes. Option B, no. The best answer is option A, yes. The requirement is satisfied because when a user creates a new Microsoft Entra ID tenant, that user automatically becomes a global administrator in the newly created tenant and possesses administrative rights to provision user accounts within it. The other choices do not satisfy the requirement because B. The solution is valid because tenant creators receive global administrator privileges in the new tenant. Exam tip. The identity creating a new Microsoft Entra tenant automatically becomes a global administrator in that new tenant. The next item is question number 485. A user named user-admin1 holds the global administrator role in tenant contoso.onmicrosoft.com. User-admin1 creates a new Microsoft Entra ID tenant named partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. A second user, user-admin2, holds the user administrator role in contoso.onmicrosoft.com. You need to create user accounts in partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. Solution: instruct user-admin2 to create the user accounts in partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. Does this solution meet the goal? Review the options. Choice A: yes. Choice B: no. The appropriate choice is option B, no. The key reason is Microsoft Entra ID administrative roles are tenant-scoped. User-admin2's user administrator role in contoso.onmicrosoft.com provides no administrative access in partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. A. User-admin2 lacks administrative permissions in the new tenant until explicitly granted a role inside partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. Keep this examination point in mind. Entra ID roles are isolated to the specific tenant where assigned and do not cross tenant boundaries. Question number 486. Review the situation. You have virtual machines VM Prod 1 and VM Prod 2. You have two recovery services vaults named RSV Vault 1 and RSV Vault 2. VM Prod 2 is currently protected and backed up in RSV Vault 1. You need to reconfigure backup for VM Prod 2 so that it backs up to RSV Vault 2. What should you do first? Option A. From RSV Vault 1, open backup items, select VM Prod 2, and stop backup. Option B. From RSV Vault 2, click Backup and select VM Prod 2. Option C. From VM Prod 2, open Disaster Recovery Settings and change the vault to RSV Vault 2. Option D. From RSV Vault 1, open Backup Jobs and export the VM Prod 2 job history. The correct answer is option A. From RSV Vault 1, open Backup Items, select VM Prod 2, and stop backup. Here is the technical justification. An Azure virtual machine can only be protected by one recovery services vault at a time. To back up VM Prod 2 using RSV Vault 2, protection must first be stopped in RSV Vault 1. The alternatives can be eliminated because B. RSV Vault 2 cannot enable backup for VM Prod 2 while it is actively protected by RSV Vault 1. C. Azure VM Disaster Recovery, Site Recovery, is used for regional replication, not vault-to-vault Azure backup migration. D. Exporting job history does not unregister or release the VM from RSV Vault 1. The key takeaway is an Azure VM can be registered to only one recovery services vault at a time. Now consider question number 487. The focus now shifts to storage accounts. Consider this scenario. An organization needs to import 8 terabytes of local data into an Azure subscription using the Azure Import-Export service. Which Azure service can be targeted as the destination for the imported data? Available choices. Choice A, Azure Blob Storage. Choice B, Azure Cosmos DB. Choice C, Azure Data Lake Analytics. Choice D, Azure SQL Database. In this case, select option A, Azure Blob Storage. The reasoning is as follows. The Azure Import-Export service supports importing data into Azure Blob Storage, block blobs and page blobs, and Azure File Shares. The remaining options are incorrect because B. Azure Cosmos DB is not a supported destination for Azure Import-Export drive shipping. C. Azure Data Lake Analytics is an analytics processing service, not an import drive target. D. Azure SQL Database does not accept raw physical drive imports via the Azure Import-Export service. Azure Import-Export service supports Azure Blob Storage and Azure Files as target storage destinations. The next item is question number 488. Review the situation. A user named user-admin1 creates a new Microsoft Entra ID tenant named partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. User-owner1 holds the owner role on the primary Azure subscription in tenant contoso.onmicrosoft.com. You need to create user accounts in partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. Solution: instruct user-owner1 to create the user accounts in partner.contoso.onmicrosoft.com. Does this solution meet the goal? Option A. Yes. Option B. No. The correct answer is option B, no. This is correct because Azure RBAC roles, such as subscription owner, operate on Azure subscription resources and do not grant directory administrative rights in Microsoft Entra ID tenants, especially separate newly created tenants. Now consider why the remaining options are unsuitable. A. Subscription owner permissions in tenant A do not provide directory administration rights in tenant B. A useful examination rule is this. Azure RBAC subscription roles, owner/contributor, do not grant directory-level user management rights in Entra ID tenants. Now consider question number 489. Next, we enter the topic of Azure RBAC. Consider this scenario. Resource group RG-Upload contains an internal load balancer LBINT and a public load balancer LBPub. An administrator named adminnet must be granted permissions to manage LBINT and LBPub following the principle of least privilege. Select the appropriate role assignment for each task. Review each blank and choose the most appropriate option. Statement 1. Role required to add a backend pool to LBINT, the blank. Choose between network contributor on LBINT, contributor on LBINT, network contributor on RG-Upload, or owner on LBINT. Statement 2. Role required to add a health probe to LBPub, the blank. Choose between network contributor on LBPub, contributor on LBPub, network contributor on RG-Upload, or owner on LBPub. The answer to the first statement is network contributor on LBINT provides network management permissions at resource scope. The answer to the second statement is network contributor on LBPub grants necessary network configuration rights at resource scope. Remember this distinction for the exam. Use the network contributor role at the specific resource scope to adhere to least privilege for load balancer management. Proceed to question number 490. Scenario. An Azure subscription contains a premium Azure container registry named Acroprod and a user-assigned managed identity named IDACI. The registry does not use Azure role-based access control with ABAC repository permissions. An image named Payments v3 is stored in Acroprod. You need to deploy an Azure Container Instances container group that pulls Payments v3 without storing registry credentials. What should you do first? The options are: Choice A. Assign the ACR pull role to IDACI at the scope of Acroprod. Choice B. Enable the administrator user account on Acroprod. Choice C. Assign the contributor role to IDACI at the container group resource group. Choice D. Configure a system-assigned managed identity on the container group. The required response is option A. Assign the ACR pull role to IDACI at the scope of Acroprod. Azure Container Instances can use a user-assigned managed identity to authenticate to a private Azure container registry. For a registry not using ABAC repository permissions, the identity needs ACR pull at the registry scope before the container group can pull the image. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. B. The administrator account uses stored credentials and conflicts with the requirement. C. Contributor on the resource group does not grant registry data plane image pull permission. D. ACI private registry image pulls use a user-assigned managed identity, not a system-assigned identity. Exam tip. For credential-free ACI pulls from a non-ABAC ACR, use a user-assigned managed identity with ACR pull on the registry. Question number 491. We are moving to enter users and groups. An administrator needs to grant 3 external project contractors access to a temporary document repository in SharePoint Online. To automate lifecycle governance, The group containing the users must be automatically removed after 180 days using group expiration policies. Which two group configurations can achieve this outcome? Each correct answer presents a complete solution. Choose the best two responses. Available choices. Choice A. A Microsoft 365 group using assigned membership. Choice B. A Microsoft 365 group using dynamic user membership. Choice C. A security group using assigned membership. Choice D. A security group using dynamic user membership. Choice E. A security group using dynamic device membership. The best answer is option A. A Microsoft 365 group using assigned membership. B. A Microsoft 365 group using dynamic user membership. The requirement is satisfied because group expiration policies in Microsoft Entra ID apply exclusively to Microsoft 365 groups. Microsoft 365 groups support both assigned and dynamic user membership types. The other choices do not satisfy the requirement because C. Expiration policies cannot be applied to security groups. D. Security groups do not support automatic expiration policies in Entra ID. E. Security groups do not support group expiration lifecycle rules. Keep this examination point in mind. Entra ID group expiration policies can only be configured for Microsoft 365 groups, not security groups. Now consider question number 492. Scenario. Tenant Contoso.com contains the following administrators: user dev admin, cloud device administrator user admin, user administrator. The tenant includes device A, Azure AD registered device B, Azure AD joined security groups configured in Contoso.com, group alpha, assigned membership, owner equals user admin group beta, dynamic device membership, owner equals user admin. For each statement, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. The first statement is, user dev admin can manually add device B to group alpha. The second statement is, user admin can manually add device A to group alpha. The third statement is, user admin can manually add device B to group beta. Statement 1. The answer is no. Cloud device admin does not override group ownership for assigned groups. Statement 2. The answer is yes. Group owners can manage membership of assigned groups. Statement 3. The answer is no. Dynamic group membership cannot be manually edited. The key takeaway is dynamic group membership is strictly rule-based and cannot be manually modified by group owners or administrators. The next item is question number 494. Consider this scenario. Resource group RG policy test contains no tags. Virtual network VNet01 in RG policy test has tag department, IT. An Azure policy definition apply tag and its default value is assigned to RG policy test with parameter tag name env and tag value test. Later, an administrator adds tag RG policy test directly to RG policy test, and then deploys a new virtual network VNet02 into RG policy test. Identify which tags apply to each virtual network. Complete each statement by selecting the appropriate value. Review Statement 1, tags assigned to VNet01, the blank. Select from Department, IT only, none, Department, IT and ENV, test only, or Department, IT, RG tag, RG policy test, and ENV, test. Review Statement 2, tags assigned to VNet02, the blank. Select from ENV, test only, none, RG tag, RG policy test only, or RG tag, RG policy test and ENV, test. Statement 1 should be completed with Department, IT only. Existing resources are not modified by append policy without remediation. Statement 2 should be completed with ENV, test only. Append policy attaches ENV, test, RG tags are not automatically inherited. Append policies target newly created resources. Resource group tags are not inherited by child resources automatically. Proceed to question number 495. This question moves us into application insights. Review the situation. You manage an Azure App Service web app named Web App Monitored. You need to capture low-level performance traces and execution diagnostic profiling to isolate application bottlenecks. Which tool should you use? Review the options. Option A, Azure Application Insights Profiler. Option B, Azure Activity Log. Option C, App Service Deployment Center. Option D, Diagnose and Solve Problems Tool. The appropriate choice is option A, Azure Application Insights Profiler. The key reason is Application Insights Profiler captures execution traces and performance profiles that help identify hot code paths and application bottlenecks. B. Activity Log records subscription-level control plane events, not code execution profiles. C. Deployment Center manages deployment sources and pipelines. D. Diagnose and Solve Problems provides guided diagnostics but is not the dedicated execution profiler. A useful examination rule is this. Use Application Insights Profiler for code-level performance traces. Use Activity Log for Azure control plane operations. Question number 496. An Azure subscription contains Resource Group RGA, location, East US, Resource Group RGB, location, West US, Virtual Network VNet A and RGA, location, West US, Virtual Machine VM Core and RGB, location, West US, attached to VNet A via NIC1. You need to create a second network interface named NIC2 for VM Core. Solution: you create NIC2 in RGA with region set to West US. Does this solution meet the goal? The options are: Choice A, yes. Choice B, no. The required response is option A, yes. Here is the technical justification. An Azure Network Interface, NIC, must reside in the same Azure region, West US, as the target virtual machine, VM Core. A NIC can exist in any resource group within the same subscription, regardless of the resource group's location. The alternatives can be eliminated because B. The solution works because NIC2 is located in West US, matching VM Core's location. Remember this distinction for the exam. Virtual machines and attached network interfaces must be located in the same Azure region, but can reside in different resource groups. Let us work through question number 497. This question focuses on virtual machines. Review the scenario carefully. An Azure subscription contains Resource Group RGA, location, East US, Resource Group RGB, location, West US, Virtual Network VNet A and RGA, location, West US, Virtual Machine VM Core and RGB, location, West US, attached to VNet A via NIC1. You need to create a second network interface named NIC2 for VM Core. Solution: you create NIC2 in RGB with region set to Central US. Does this solution meet the goal? Choose from the following options. Choice A, yes. Choice B, no. In this case, select option B, no. The reasoning is as follows. VM Core is located in West US. A network interface created in Central US cannot be attached to a virtual machine in West US because the VM and NIC must reside in the identical Azure region. The remaining options are incorrect because A. Creating NIC2 in Central US fails because NIC location must match the VM's region, West US. Exam tip. Network interfaces cannot cross regional boundaries to attach to virtual machines in another region. Let us examine question number 498. Let us first review the situation. You deploy a virtual machine scale set running Windows Server 2019 using an Azure Resource Manager template. You need to automatically install and configure Nginx software on all virtual machine instances immediately after deployment. Which tool or extension should you configure in the deployment template? Compare the following options. Option A is Azure Custom Script Extension. Option B is the Publish AZ-104 configuration template. Option C is Azure Application Insights. Option D is Microsoft Intune Device Configuration Profiles. The correct answer is option A, Azure Custom Script Extension. This is correct because the Azure Custom Script Extension can be declared directly in ARM or Bicep templates to run post-deployment installation scripts, such as Jinx configuration, on virtual machine scale set instances automatically. Now consider why the remaining options are unsuitable. B. Publish AZ-104 configuration uploads DSC scripts to storage but does not configure scale set template extensions directly. C. Application Insights monitors application telemetry and performance, but cannot install OS packages. D. Intune Device Configuration Profiles manage corporate endpoint compliance, not ARM automated VM deployment configurations. Keep this examination point in mind. Use the custom script extension in ARM templates to automatically execute setup scripts on VM scale set instances. Next, question number 500. Scenario. An administrator needs to query error events from a log analytics table named event using KQL in Azure Monitor. Which Kusto query should you run in log analytics? Options. Option A, search in, event, error. Option B, event where event type is error. Option C, select asterisk from event where event type equals error. Option D, get event where $_event type equals error. The appropriate choice is option A, search in, event, error. The KQL search operator syntax search in, event, error searches for the string error across all columns within the event log table. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. B. Is not valid KQL syntax for string filtering, == or contains is required. C. This uses SQL syntax, which is invalid in Kusto query language. D. This uses PowerShell syntax, which cannot be executed in log analytics. The key takeaway is use search in, table name, string in KQL to perform full-text string searches across a specific table. Apply precise reasoning to question number 501. Next, we enter the topic of public IP addresses. Analyze the scenario before evaluating the choices. You deploy 3 Azure virtual machines, placing each VM into a distinct availability zone. To enable secure cross-premises connectivity to an on-premises database server, you plan to provision an Azure Virtual Network Gateway for a site-to-site VPN. Which public IP address SKU and assignment type must be configured for the VPN gateway? Compare every choice before deciding. Consider option A, standard SKU and static allocation. Consider option B, basic SKU and static allocation. Consider option C, basic SKU and dynamic allocation. Consider option D, standard SKU and dynamic allocation. The best answer is option A, standard SKU and static allocation. The requirement is satisfied because Azure Virtual Network Gateways deployed across availability zones require a standard SKU public IP address with static allocation. Basic SKU public IPs do not support availability zones. The other choices do not satisfy the requirement because B, basic SKU public IP addresses do not support zone-aware or zone-redundant deployments. C, dynamic assignment and basic SKUs are unsupported for zone-redundant VPN gateways. D, standard SKU public IP addresses do not support dynamic allocation, standard SKU IPs are always static. Zone-redundant VPN gateways require a standard SKU public IP address with static allocation. Now consider question number 502. An administrator receives a CSV file containing names and email addresses for 500 external vendor consultants. You need to provision guest user accounts in tenantcontoso.com. Solution: execute a Microsoft Graph PowerShell script that invokes new MG user for each consultant and sets user type to member. Does this solution meet the goal? Review the options. Option A. Yes. Option B. No. The appropriate choice is option B, no. The key reason is new MG user with user type set to member creates internal member accounts. The requirement is to provision external B2B guest users, which should be created through the invitation workflow. A. Creating member users does not satisfy the requirement for guest accounts representing external consultants. A useful examination rule is this. Use new MG invitation or the Microsoft Enter bulk invite operation for external B2B guests. New MG user creates tenant user objects directly. Let us focus on question number 503. This scenario establishes the key requirement. An administrator receives a CSV file containing names and email addresses for 500 external vendor consultants. You need to provision guest user accounts in tenantcontoso.com. Solution: from Microsoft Entra ID in the Azure portal, run the bulk create user task. Does this solution meet the goal? The relevant choices are as follows. Now examine choice A. Yes. Now examine choice B. No. The required response is option B, no. Here is the technical justification. The bulk create user feature in Microsoft Entra ID provisions internal member accounts. To invite external users in bulk, administrators must select bulk invite users. The alternatives can be eliminated because A. Bulk create user provisions standard member accounts instead of external B2B guest accounts. Remember this distinction for the exam. Use bulk invite users in the Entra ID portal to import external B2B guests via CSV. Question number 504. Highlights an important distinction. Focus on the following situation. An administrator receives a CSV file containing names and email addresses for 500 external vendor consultants. You need to provision guest user accounts in tenantcontoso.com. Solution: execute a Microsoft Graph PowerShell script that invokes new MG invitation for each consultant. Does this solution meet the goal? Focus on the distinction between these options. Option A. Yes. Option B. No. In this case, select option A. Yes. The reasoning is as follows. New MG invitation creates Microsoft Enter B2B invitations and provisions the invited external identities as guest users. Iterating over the CSV can therefore create the required 500 guest accounts. The remaining options are incorrect because B. The Microsoft Graph Invitation Template is the supported workflow for provisioning external B2B guest users. Exam tip. Use new MG invitation for scripted B2B guest invitations and bulk invite users for CSV-based portal provisioning. We will now analyze question number 505. Consider the following scenario. You plan to host 4 web applications in Azure App Service with the following runtime requirements: App 1, .NET 8 App 2, ASP.NET version 4.8 App 3, Node.js 22 App 4, Python 3.12. What is the minimum number of Azure App Service plans required to host all 4 web applications? Now examine the possible answers. Choice A, 2. Choice B, 1. Choice C, 3. Choice D, 4. The correct answer is option A, 2. This is correct because ASP.NET version 4.8 requires a Windows App Service plan, while Python 3.12 is supported on Linux App Service. An App Service plan has a single operating system, so at least one Windows plan and one Linux plan are required. The .NET and Node.js apps can be placed on compatible plans. Now consider why the remaining options are unsuitable. B. One plan cannot contain both Windows and Linux web apps. C. A third plan is unnecessary because compatible apps can share either existing plan. D. Separate plans for every app are not required. Keep this examination point in mind. All apps in an app service plan share its operating system. Windows and Linux apps require separate plans. Question number 506. Consider this scenario. 2 Azure virtual machines are configured as shown below: VMwin1, Windows Server 2019, private IP 10.0.1.4, public IP 131.107.50.20, OSDNS suffix contoso.com, connected to VNet1. VMLNX2, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, private IP 10.0.1.5, public IP 131.107.90.80, OSDNS suffix none, connected to VNet1. Azure DNS zones configured: contoso.com, public DNS zone fabricam.com, private DNS zone administrative actions performed, link fabricam.com to VNet1 with auto-registration enabled. Grant VMwin1 and VMLNX2 owner permissions on contoso.com. For each statement, select yes if the statement is true. Otherwise, select no. Statement 1. A DNS record for VMwin1 with IP address 131.107.50.20 is automatically created in contoso.com. Statement 2. A DNS record for VMwin1 with IP address 10.0.1.4 is automatically created in fabricam.com. Statement 3. A DNS record for VMLNX2 with IP address 10.0.1.5 is automatically created in fabricam.com. Statement 1. The answer is no. Public DNS zones do not support auto-registration. Statement 2. The answer is yes. Private DNS auto-registration creates a records using private IPs. Statement 3. The answer is yes. Private DNS auto-registration registers connected VNet VM private IPs. The key takeaway is auto-registration creates private IP records and is supported only on private Azure DNS zones linked to virtual networks. Let us work through question number 508. The focus now shifts to Azure RBAC. Review the scenario carefully. An administrator configures a custom Azure RBAC role definition with the following properties: assignable scopes, /subscription /3D620955C7144409556ED63420866C2D7. Select the appropriate JSON section to modify for each requirement. Choose the correct entry for every drop-down field. The first statement reads, to allow users assigned role 1 to sign into virtual machines, modify the blank section. Choose between data actions, not actions, assignable scopes, or role type. The second statement reads, to restrict assignment of role 1 specifically to a resource group named RG-Prod1, modify the blank section. Choose between assignable scopes, actions, not actions, data actions, or role type. For statement 1, select data actions. VM sign-in permissions are declared as data actions. For statement 2, select assignable scopes. Set the resource group resource ID as the role's assignable scope. Actions manage control plane resources. Data actions grant data plane operations such as VM sign-in. Assignable scopes limits where the role can be assigned. Proceed to question number 509. Scenario. Diagnostic logging is enabled and targeted to a log analytics workspace. An administrator needs to query critical service outage events showing event timestamp, operation name, and target resource ID. Complete the query by selecting the correct query elements. For the first statement, select log table, the blank. Select from Azure Activity, Heartbeat, Network Monitoring, or perf. For the second statement, select projection operator, the blank. Select from project, extend, join, or print. The answer to the first statement is Azure Activity. Activity logs record service status and management operations. The answer to the second statement is project. KQL operator used to select specific output columns. A useful examination rule is this. Use Azure Activity to query platform event logs and project to select output columns in KQL. Let us examine question number 510. Begin by examining the scenario. Storage accounts FileShare 01 contains an Azure file share named ShareData. The Azure subscription is linked to a hybrid Microsoft Entra ID tenant containing a synchronized on-premises ADDS security group named Group Finance. You need members of Group Finance to access ShareData over SMB by using their ADDS credentials and to receive the storage file data SMB share elevated contributor role. What should you do first? Compare the following options. Option A is Enable Active Directory Domain Services, ADDS, authentication on FileShare 01. Option B is Configure directory and file permissions by using Windows File Explorer. Option C is Mount ShareData on a domain-joined virtual machine. Option D is Create a private endpoint for FileShare 01. The best answer is Option A, Enable Active Directory Domain Services, ADDS, authentication on FileShare 01. Identity-based SMB access must first be enabled on the storage account by configuring an identity source. After ADDS authentication is enabled and identities are synchronized, you can assign the share-level Azure RBAC role to Group Finance. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. B. Directory and file ACLs are configured after identity-based authentication and share-level permissions. C. Mounting the share is an access step, not the prerequisite identity configuration. D. A private endpoint controls network reachability and does not enable SMB identity authentication. Remember this distinction for the exam. Azure Files SMB access uses two permission layers, share-level Azure RBAC and directory/file ACLs, built on a configured identity source. Review question number 512. Carefully. We are moving to log queries. Let us first review the situation. An administrator needs to return only events whose severity is error from the event table in an Azure Log Analytics workspace named Workspace 1. Which KQL query should you run? Now examine the possible answers. Choice A, event where event level name equals error. Choice B, event where event level name equals error. Choice C, select asterisk from event where event level name equals error. Choice D, get event where object, $_event level name EQ error. The required response is option A, event where event level name equals error. The requirement is satisfied because KQL uses the where operator and the equality operator equals to filter rows. Event level name identifies the event severity, so this query returns only error events. The other choices do not satisfy the requirement because B, a single equals sign is not the KQL equality operator. C, SQL select syntax is not valid. KQL. D, PowerShell complete and where object syntax cannot be used as a log analytics KQL query. Exam tip. Use table, where column equals value for exact KQL filtering. Use search when you need full text matching across columns. The next item is question number 513. Review the situation. An enterprise plans to deploy an ExpressRoute virtual network gateway in Azure to connect its on-premises data center. The gateway deployment must satisfy the following criteria: support up to 10 gigabits per second operational bandwidth, support deployment across Azure availability zones, support Azure ExpressRoute FastPath, minimize total deployment costs. Which ExpressRoute gateway SKU should you deploy? Choice A, AirGW3AZ. Choice B, AirGW1AZ. Choice C, AirGW2AZ. Choice D, AirGW3. The appropriate choice is option A, AirGW3AZ. The key reason is AirGW3AZ is availability zone enabled, supports up to 10 gigabits per second gateway throughput, and is a supported FastPath gateway SKU. It is the lowest listed SKU that satisfies all requirements. B, AirGW1AZ is zone enabled but does not meet the 10 gigabits per second requirement and does not support FastPath. C, AirGW2AZ is zone enabled but does not meet the 10 gigabits per second requirement and is not a FastPath gateway SKU. D, AirGW3 lacks the availability zone suffix and therefore does not provide the required zone-redundant gateway deployment. Keep this examination point in mind. FastPath requires a supported high-performance gateway such as AirGW3AZ. The availability zone suffix identifies availability zone-enabled gateway SKUs. Question number 514. The focus now shifts to management groups. An organization manages 15 Azure subscriptions and plans to purchase additional subscriptions. A security group named Group Access Admins must be granted permissions to manage RBAC role assignments across all current and future subscriptions. The solution must adhere to the principle of least privilege and minimize operational overhead. What should you do? Choices. Option A. Assign Group Access Admins the User Access Administrator role on the Root Management Group. Option B. Assign Group Access Admins the Owner role on the Root Management Group. Option C. Create a new management group and assign Group Access Admins the User Access Administrator role on that management group. Option D. Create a new management group and assign Group Access Admins the Owner role on that management group. In this case, select Option A. Assign Group Access Admins the User Access Administrator role on the Root Management Group. Here is the technical justification. Assigning User Access Administrator at the Root Management Group level automatically grants role assignment management rights across all current and future child subscriptions under the hierarchy, satisfying least privilege and minimizing effort. The alternatives can be eliminated because B. Owner grants full resource management rights in addition to role assignments, violating least privilege. C. Creating a new management group requires moving subscriptions manually, adding operational overhead. D. Owner grants access permissions beyond managing access control. The key takeaway is assign User Access Administrator at the Root Management Group to manage role assignments across all subscriptions with least privilege. Question number 515. Consider this scenario. You manage an Azure tenant with two subscriptions named Production Sub and Development Sub. An administrator previously created a custom role-based access control (RBAC) role and set its assignable scope strictly to a resource group named WebRG located in Production Sub. You receive a new requirement to allow this custom role to be assigned at the resource group level across both Production Sub and Development Sub. You must achieve this with the least amount of administrative overhead. What should you do? Available choices. Option A. Modify the custom role by replacing WebRG with Production Sub and Development Sub in its assignable scopes. Option B. Create two new custom roles, setting the assignable scope of one to Production Sub and the other to Development Sub. Option C. Select the custom role, add Development Sub to its assignable scopes, and remove WebRG. Option D. Delete the custom role and recreate it at the management group level. The best answer is Option A. Modify the custom role by replacing WebRG with Production Sub and Development Sub in its assignable scopes. The reasoning is as follows. A custom role can have multiple subscriptions defined in its assignable scopes property. By adding both Production Sub and Development Sub to the assignable scopes, the role becomes available for assignment at any scope, including all resource groups, within those subscriptions. Removing the specific WebRG scope cleans up the definition, as the subscription scope inherently covers it. The remaining options are incorrect because B. Creating new separate roles increases administrative effort and duplicates role definitions. C. Adding only Development Sub and removing WebRG would leave Production Sub without an assignable scope, meaning the role could no longer be assigned within the production subscription. D. Deleting and recreating the role is unnecessary administrative effort when you can seamlessly update the assignable scopes of an existing custom role. Custom Azure RBAC roles can have multiple management groups, subscriptions, or resource groups listed in their assignable scopes, allowing a single role definition to be reused across boundaries. Question number 516. Now. This question moves us into network security groups. Scenario. You administer a virtual network containing a subnet named Backend Subnet. A network security group, NSG, named Backend NSG is attached to the subnet and contains only the default security rules. You must create an outbound security rule that blocks virtual machines in backend subnet from accessing Azure storage while allowing access to other internet destinations. What should you specify as the destination in the new outbound security rule? Option A. IP addresses. Option B. Application security group. Option C. Service tag. Option D. Any. The correct answer is option C. Service tag. This is correct because the storage service tag represents the Azure Storage public IP address prefixes maintained by Microsoft. Using it as the destination lets the NSG block Azure storage without manually maintaining IP ranges and without blocking unrelated internet destinations. Now consider why the remaining options are unsuitable. A. Manually entered IP addresses are difficult to maintain because Azure storage address ranges can change. B. An application security group represents network interfaces in a virtual network, not Azure platform services. D. Any would match all destinations and would block the other required internet traffic. A useful examination rule is this. Use service tags such as storage or storage region in NSG rules when the destination is an Azure platform service. Now consider question number 517. Scenario. You manage 2 storage accounts. Data Lake 01 contains a private blob container named raw data. Archive 02 contains an Azure file share named historical logs with an existing directory named import. Microsoft Entra authorization is configured, and the required data plane roles can be assigned. You will use AZ copy to copy data from the blob container to the existing directory in the Azure file share. Identify an authentication method supported by AZ copy for each endpoint. Match each endpoint to the appropriate method. Each method may be used once, more than once, or not at all. Review the items in the left column. Item 1 on the left, Data Lake 01, Source Blob Container, Archive 02, Destination File Directory. The second set contains Choice A on the right, Anonymous. Choice B on the right, OAuth, Microsoft Entra ID, or a Shared Access Signature, SAS. Choice C on the right, a Shared Access Signature, SAS, only. Choice D on the right, a Storage Account Access Key only. Here are the completed matches. The correct match for Data Lake 01, Source Blob Container, is B. OAuth, Microsoft Entra ID, or a Shared Access Signature, SAS. The correct match for Archive 02, Destination File Directory, is B. OAuth, Microsoft Entra ID, or a Shared Access Signature, SAS. AZ Copy supports Microsoft Entra OAuth authorization and SAS for Azure Blob Storage. Current AZ Copy versions also support OAuth or SAS for file and directory operations in Azure Files, so the existing destination directory can use either method when the required roles are assigned. Remember this distinction for the exam. AZ Copy supports Microsoft Entra authorization for blob storage and for Azure Files file/directory operations. Some share-level operations still require SAS. Question number 519. Scenario. You are preparing to migrate files from various on-premises workstations to an Azure storage account named Corp Storage. The workstations run different operating systems as shown below: Workstation A, Windows 11 Workstation B, Ubuntu Linux Workstation C, Mac OS. From which of these workstations can you successfully install and use AZ Copy to transfer the data? Options. Option A, Workstation A only. Option B, Workstation A and Workstation B only. Option C, Workstation A and Workstation C only. Option D, Workstation A, Workstation B, and Workstation C. The best answer is option D, Workstation A, Workstation B, and Workstation C. The requirement is satisfied because AZ Copy v10 is a versatile, cross-platform command line utility. Microsoft provides executable binaries for Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, meaning it can be run natively on all 3 operating systems to upload, download, or copy data to and from Azure storage. The incorrect choices fail for the following reasons. A, B, C, These options incorrectly limit the supported operating systems. AZ copy is not restricted to Windows, nor is it excluded from macOS or Linux environments. Exam tip. AZ copy is fully cross-platform and natively supported on Windows, Linux, and macOS without requiring special emulation. You have completed Part 12 of the AZ-104 Microsoft Azure Administrator Exam Practice Series. Keep building your Azure administration skills by opening the complete playlist and continuing with the remaining parts in sequence. If this session helped your preparation, like the video, subscribe to Tech with Kaushik, and enable notifications for more certification exam practice content. Share your score, doubts, or feedback in the comments. I would be happy to hear how your preparation is going. Thank you for learning with Tech with Kaushik. Keep practicing, and I will see you in the next part.